Fellow says, the most accurate, what? Descriptive model is the quantum model. Well, is that what science is about? Is that what physics is about? Describing? I describe a chair, and that's science, that's physics. You know, here I measure this chair, it has 1 seat, 2 armrests, and 4 legs. Does that make you a scientist? Does that make you a physicist because you described a chair? So this person thinks that quantum is the most accurate scientific or physical theory because it describes. No, descriptions are not part of science. In science we don't describe. In science we have to explain. You got to explain something. Okay. Okay. And go on the other side again. Give me a second here. Another issue or comment on this? No, just wanted to say here that there's this professor, Donald Simonek. He's from Lock Haven University in Pennsylvania, emeritus, by the way. And he says, science doesn't explain, science describes. And that's what most people out there believe. And the reason they believe that is that mathematics can only describe. And so for the last 400 years, we have equated science with math, when that's not the case. Meaning math, science meaning physics, right? So they're equating physics with math, when physics has absolutely nothing to do with math. Mathematics has nothing to do with physics. Mathematics is just a descriptive language. That's all it is. It just describes. And science is not about describing. Neither is physics. Physics is about explaining. You have to explain something. Otherwise, if you describe a chair, is that science? Is that what quantum does, just describe? So no, science is not about describing. Science is about explaining, because that's where you have to break your brains. That's where you got to, burn some calories up to some gray matter, okay? And just in case, for those who are wondering, here's the difference between an explanation and a description, okay? Explain the causes or reasons, in the case of philosophy, underlying a phenomenon, okay? And second notion of that is how or why a consummated event happened. An explanation deals exclusively with the past. Science only deals with the past. We have to explain consummated events. We have to explain how something happened, what caused it to happen. That's the issue. How a magnet attracts another, okay? So when you say, why does a magnet attract another, you're really saying how, what caused it, okay? That's what physics is about. Not saying it did. That's not science, that's description, that's mathematics, okay? And then they give an irrational explanation for why it did or how it did it. Yeah. So, and what is a description? It's just a listing of properties of a physical object. In science, we use adjectives to describe and adverbs when we want to qualify or characterize motion. Okay. Next issue, fellow says, get it up here. Got to get faster at raising these things up there. Quantum mechanics has many flaws in its physical interpretation, acknowledged by physicists, despite what Bill says. Well, this fella's putting words in my mouth, okay? I've always said. And here's proof, evidence, okay? Okay. Here's what I always put up there. Feynman, I think I can safely say that nobody understands quantum mechanics. Niels Bohr said it. Steven Weinberg, Nobel Prize, he said it. Werner Heisenberg, they all said the same thing. No one understands quantum mechanics. And so I'm repeating what they're saying. When I say this, people like this gentleman here, they say, well, you didn't understand really what they meant by that. I didn't understand what they meant by that. They're saying that they don't understand, all of them saying, and these people say, well, if they didn't understand, how can we have technology? That's essentially their answer most of the times, okay? They say they do understand, for otherwise you wouldn't have that computer you're typing on. That's the kind of answer they give you, okay? So here are the issues, okay? For this gentleman to answer, okay? If he's smart enough, which I doubt, okay? These are the issues he's got to answer, okay? First of all, he's using this statement. Let's put that up there again so we can compare it, okay? Get rid of Feynman here. There we go, see, get rid of that. He said, has many flaws. Why does he use that language? It's not that it has many flaws, okay, buddy? It's that there is not a single rational explanation, a single rational physical interpretation in all of mathematical physics, in all of quantum mechanics. Why does he say it has many flaws? It doesn't have many flaws. There's not one physical interpretation that is rational in all of mathematical physics. And that's what I challenge this fellow to come up with. Just one explanation that is rational. Okay? By rational, I mean that you can make a movie of it and you can understand it by simply staring at the movie. Okay? And so here are the issues, because these people, when you say, hey, you know, here you have Feynman saying that, you know, no one understands quantum mechanics, they say, of course they understand. For otherwise, you wouldn't have a computer you're typing on. That's the kind of answer they give you. So here's the issue to you, okay? Do the mathematicians understand or don't they? Can they give you a physical interpretation for the subatomic world or not? Can they draw a hydrogen atom? Okay, and justify it. I mean, you know, does the electron bead, how does it stand always in orbit? Why does it fly away spontaneously? Why does it fall to the nucleus? That's what you got to explain. So it's not just saying, yeah, I can draw a hydrogen atom. Yeah, some idiocy that you might draw. That doesn't mean that you can justify it. In fact, they explain electricity with the planetary model. They explain, quantum jump with a planetary model. They explain ionization with a planetary model. So please justify the planetary model. That's what you got to justify. What you got to justify, why doesn't the electron fall to the center, to the nucleus, or why doesn't it spontaneously fly away? If you can't answer that question, you don't have a rational hydrogen atom, and you can't even start your presentation. Can anyone in mathematical physics, in mathematics, can they make sense of a particle being at two places at once? What sense does that make? That came from the mind of an idiot. That's what it's known. It's an idiot. That's the correct word. Don't tell me that it has many flaws. Tell them that they're all a bunch of idiots. That's the correct language to use. I'm being polite here. I'm just calling them idiots, okay? Does the fact that we have computers prove that a particle can be at two places at once? Okay, that's the theory that these people are giving you. So don't tell me it has many flaws. It's all flawed, and it's not flawed. It is irrational. That's what it's called. And this wishy-washy guy gives us the answer. He says, has many flaws in its physical interpretation. Why doesn't he use the correct language and say it's all irrational? Because otherwise his religion goes down the drain. That's why he's not willing to say that. So he said, well, let's get some flaws. We have to work on it still. There's nothing to work on it. They're never going to work on it. No one's working on it. Because they can't work on it. You cannot explain absolutely anything with particles. And quantum is based on particles. So every time you introduce the particle hypothesis, meaning, which, by the way, is not a particle, but that's a second issue. But even if you did it with corpuscles, with classical particles, you cannot explain a single phenomenon in quantum mechanics, in the subatomic world. Not one. Listen to what I'm saying. I want you to explain one. Find anything, anywhere on the planet, any mathematical physics that can explain one, just one, can give you a physical interpretation that is rational. I mean, entanglement, action at a distance, how does this particle affect that one? Tunneling, how does this particle go through the barrier and appear on the other side? It's all magic. It's more than magic, it's unimaginable. You know, a particle at two places at once, what's there to imagine? How is that possible? What sense does it make? So the correct word is idiot. That's the word you got to use. When you refer to a mathematician, you got to use the word idiot. You got to call him an idiot, and then you're okay, then you're fine. Don't say he's got flaws and that he's working on it and we don't know everything. That's idiocy. Okay, another issue. Okay, if I can get this thing in there. Okay, and perhaps one day we'll find the true physical interpretations that underlie our universe, but for now it's exciting to experimentally verify. And in science we don't verify anything, but he says someday, some happy day, right? I'm going to do it by myself. That's how the song went, right? Well, here it is, okay? Here's my answer to this fellow. What will change in the next 400 years that hasn't changed in the last 400 years if the mathematicians, right, continue to be in charge of science? What are they going to do? Just descriptions for the next 400 years? Assuming we live that long. How can a mathematician ever provide a rational physical interpretation to a mechanism if he doesn't introduce objects, because he wants to mathematize everything, he just talks about equations, only does equations, and dismisses physical interpretations as philosophy. He says, oh, that's philosophy. We know it's irrational. So they know it's irrational. They can't give you a physical interpretation. They don't use objects, but you want them to give you a physical interpretation someday, some happy day. Experimental verifying, that's known as religion. That only goes to believing, to your opinion, to change your opinion or to confirm your opinion. So anything related to the word verify, religion, has nothing to do with science whatsoever. We don't verify anything. Certainly, we don't use experiments in science. The only purpose of an experiment is to persuade the jury. The only purpose of evidence is to persuade the jury. Okay, so verify, you know, there you have the synonyms or what it means. Belief, opinion, experiment, proof, persuasion, convincing, all that stuff. None of that has anything to do with science. That has to do with religion. Anyone who does experiments is just trying to convince you of something. They're trying to persuade you, they're trying to change your mind or to confirm how you believe. That's it. It's got nothing to do with objectivity, with understanding a mechanism, which is what science and physics are all about. Okay, a fellow says, I think the same fellow, says what? Says, Bill is not a scientist. In the scientific method, assumption, hypothesis, investigation, mechanism, conclusion, no mechanism or conclusion, no mechanism in all of mathematical physics, not a rational one, for the invisible, intangible stuff, okay? Mother Nature's invisible, intangible world, there is not one mechanism, not one, okay? But if you can come up with one mechanism, hey, great, I'll buy you a beer. Okay, retest assumption. Retest for what? What are you going to retest it for? Until we can falsify the hypothesis. Well, in science we don't falsify. We don't do falsifications. That's people who are trying to, you know, hit it big. You know, they falsify documents. They falsify money. You know, we don't falsify anybody in science, physics. And this fellow signs Joe Sands. I worked with atomic force microscope. I use my atomic force microscope. I'm a scientist. He thinks he's a scientist because he uses a microscope. That's a lab boy. He thinks he sees himself as a scientist. I'm a deluded mathematician, he says. Well, yeah, that one I think he's probably right. Okay, I'll vouch for that. Yeah, if to you science is about describing, verifying, and falsifying, then yes, I do not fit that definition. Okay, your definition of science. And here's, he continues with the scientific method here. If I can get this in there. It says the essentials of science, this is according to him, right? The essentials of science are evidence. Okay, what gathered in experiments. What do you need evidence for? Evidence is used to persuade a jury. That's what you use evidence for. You don't use evidence in science. You use evidence in religion. Anyone introducing evidence is trying to persuade the jury. Theories about the evidence. Theories about the evidence? No, we need theories about a mechanism. Okay? And then the requirement that contradicting evidence falsify a theory. Okay, again, falsify a theory means that they convinced you otherwise. That's all that falsify means. So we don't present evidence, we don't do experiment, and we don't falsify theories, explanations. Okay? Whatever's false to you is true to your neighbor. So anyone using the word falsify, again, belongs to religion, not to science. Okay? However it is gathered, evidence must be unambiguous and repeatable, and it must be objective. I like this. He said, two impartial observers must come to the same conclusion. Okay, what if they don't? Yeah, what if they don't come to the same conclusion? What should we do? Should we vote on it 50% plus one wins? Or worse, what if they both agree? And the two observers came to the conclusion that the world is flat. Okay, so we have the flat earthers, or the two came to the conclusion that Jesus went to heaven and came back after 3 days or whatever. What should we do? The two observers agreed. They're from the same congregation. So again, none of that has anything to do with science. It's got to do with religion, what this fellow is talking about. He thought he was a scientist because he runs in a microscope. My God, poor fellow.